Hello, everyone. This is Whitney Will from Star Hearth Astrology, and I am here today to talk to you about the new moon that we have today in Aries. So the exact moment of the new moon is going to occur at 8:30 p.m. Mountain Time. So you can just adjust that for your time zone to know when the exact moment is, but really this colors more than just, that minute, kind of the quality of time around this. And also, it's going to color both what's happening in the next 2 weeks. So from the new moon until the full moon that we have a Scorpio full moon on April 26th. So it's going to kind of color that time period. And then also the lunar month. So from the new moon in Aries until the new moon in Taurus, which we'll have in May. And then it also kind of sets us off for a 6-month period. So from the new moon in Aries today until the full moon in Aries, which will happen during Libra season. So sometime in the end of September and the first few weeks of October while the sun is in the sign of Libra. So we can kind of think of it in multiple ways, which is maybe not what Aries' strong suit is. That kind of confuses the energy of Aries to try and think about things in multiple ways, because Aries is effective because it is, here's what I'm doing, ready, go. And so it's a cardinal sign. It initiates things, and thinking about things in multidimensional ways can be, is really more of a strength of the mutable signs. And so why am I talking about this? I'm talking about this because Mars, the ruler of Aries, the ruler of this lunation, the ruler of this new moon, is in the sign of Gemini, which is very much thinking about things in multiple ways. And so really the core challenge of this new moon is to begin to take steps along a path without knowing which path you're going to have to take. So, right, this is about really keeping your options open, right? It's still the beginning. You can still begin things, but it's not so much about closing doors as it is about trying to have kind of the mental flexibility and the physical nimbleness to start multiple balls in motion without knowing which one is really going to be the path forward. So that is the challenge, and that's what we're going to work towards. And we're not really going to know, maybe for some time, what that is going to, which one it's going to be. There's a lot of dynamic energy. We've got almost every planet and all of the inner planets in air signs and fire signs right now, which is super, super dynamic. Really, I mean, we've got the outer planets. We've got Neptune in a water sign, and Uranus in an earth sign, and Pluto in an earth sign, but everybody else is in an air or a fire sign of the traditional planets. So very, very dynamic. We'll see as we move towards the end of April, things are going to slow down. And even in the coming week, next week, they're going to start to slow down. We're going to get Venus into Taurus, and then we'll have the Sun and Mercury in Taurus by next week, by the 19th. I think it's the 19th, maybe it's the 20th. So things are going to start to slow down, and Mars towards the end of April will move into a water sign. So we'll have this massive kind of cooling off process, but we are not there yet. We are in all of the fire, we're in all of the dynamics. And so that's what I'm going to speak to in talking about this new moon. So for the past few new moons and full moons, I have been uncharacteristically optimistic about them, and excited about their kind of the promise that they hold. This one is a little bit more of a mixed bag. So when I look at the dynamics at play in this new moon, what I see is it's pretty high stakes, and you have to keep your options open, which is really tricky, right? It's easy to keep your options open if things don't matter to you and won't have a huge effect. It's harder to keep your options open when things feel really important and pretty dire. We're really going to have to lean into that kind of the equilibrium of Aquarius to kind of keep looking at things from the big picture. So it's really the big picture that's going to ground us in these next few weeks, understanding that over time, certain things get sorted, and really having touching in, I think, with the humility of understanding that we don't know how the chips are going to fall. Ultimately, we may have very good ideas, we may have very good mental models, we may have very good algorithms. To map that for us, we may have very potent intuitions, but we don't know. And so we want to stay flexible while also not just excusing ourselves from participating altogether. So that's the challenge. And so what do those things look like? I'm going to break down a couple of them for you. So we've got this new moon at 22 degrees of Aquarius, Aries. Whoa, 22 degrees of Aries. So anything that you have in the cardinal sign, so that's Libra, Cancer, Capricorn, that's at 22 degrees is going to be affected by this new moon. And yeah, so that's kind of like the hot button. So what do we have kind of surrounding that? We've already talked about Mars as the ruler. So Mars rules Aries. Mars is in charge of both the sun and the moon at this particular moment of time. Mars is in Gemini, trying to do everything, trying to plan for every eventuality, which is why sometimes Mars in Gemini can be a little bit erratic. I heard one time people were talking about, I was watching some documentary on children or something, and they were talking about how distractible toddlers are and how they go from like one thing to the next. And it's actually not a problem of attention deficit. It's not that they are not paying attention. It's that they're too good at paying attention, which means they're paying attention to lots of things. And I think that is really Mars in Gemini, is paying attention to a lot of things all at once. And right, Gemini can just kind of like explode with all the options of what could happen. And so we have Mars kind of charged in that. And then Mars is building this trine to Jupiter. So expansiveness, especially mental expansiveness, an abundance of the possibilities, an abundance of the options, really also having that optimism that you can have everything you want. If you make the right choice, which is going to be really hard for Mars and Gemini, because weighing the options of what is the right choice is going to be really difficult. So that trine builds for all of this week, and it perfects on Friday. So on April 16th, we will have the moment where Mars comes into that exact trine with Jupiter. So things could, I think, with the waxing energy of the moon, so after this new moon, we have the moon separating from the sun. It's growing. The light is growing. There's a lot of energy in that. We could have just feeling like we have to make everything in the world happen. That first quarter that will come a week after the new moon, I think, could be a little bit of a downer. Because that's, we're going to start feeling that we can't make everything happen. But for this week, we definitely might be feeling that, and it's a good idea to lean into that because, like I said, we want to keep all of the options open. So as many of the balls as you can keep in motion, do that. There's support for that in the skies. So it should be kind of, it may be impulsive because Mars in Gemini is ruled by Mercury. Mercury is in Aries. So Mars and Mercury are staying in each other's houses. They're buds, they're helping each other out, but it is a lot of quick, impulsive actions. So part of that flexibility that we're talking about is not doing stuff that you can't take back. So, right, it's, not sending in too many deposits, unless you're willing to let that go, unless that's necessary to move forward, but you also can recognize that maybe that is not the one path. So, and that goes for emotional deposits. It goes for not saying things that you're not going to be able to take back in terms of, because we need to keep our options open. I keep saying that. I really think that that is key for these few weeks. And so just as much as you can, right, do the things, but don't cross the Rubicon. So there's that at play. And right, it's being assisted by Jupiter. So Jupiter has the optimism, has generally the luck to support those actions. Especially if they have a very broad view. Jupiter is in Aquarius. These are humanitarian ideals. So the more that you can, right, find your place as an individual within the community and act towards that for the good of you, yes, but also for the community, then, right, that's going to be the action, and that's going to be the thing that Jupiter smiles upon. And in fact, if you can, as much as you can, translate action this week into the gathering of information and the expanding of your ideas and the expanding of your sense of what the possibilities are, I think that is going to be the most powerful action that you can take this week. So, right, it's action in a mental frame, Mars in Gemini, supported by Jupiter expanding the mind in Aquarius. And so there's that piece, right? Climb the mountain so that you can see the whole view of the horizon, so that you can see, where the rivers are, where the water is flowing, where you might find sustenance, what might be good for shelter. Of course, all of these things metaphorically, but maybe it would probably be a good thing if you have a lot of pent up energy. Feel free to climb a mountain as well. So we've got that piece. Now, the other piece that we have that is maybe not so much tied into the new moon through a system of rulership, but is in terms of proximity, is we have Venus square to Pluto, and that square, that aspect perfects just about an hour after the new moon. So a few things about that. Okay, so we've got Pluto at 26 degrees of Capricorn. We have Venus at 26 degrees of Aries. They're going to come into this 90-degree angle where they challenge each other. And it's really, I think, Pluto is in the superior position. So Pluto is in the overcoming position. So, we can kind of think Pluto is probably going to win this one. And Venus is not in good shape. And so there's a few reasons why we can see that. Venus is in Aries, which is a sign of her detriment. So she struggles a little bit more in there to do traditionally Venusian things. That doesn't mean she's a bad Venus. She can be a very effective Venus, just not a very traditional Venus. bringing things together, creating harmony. That's not really the project of Aries, and that's why Venus in Aries doesn't do traditionally Venusian things. So she's there. She's quite close to the sun still, so she's about 4 degrees away from the sun, which is, she's in a condition of combustion. So if you looked for her in the sky, you couldn't see her. She's so close to the sun that you can't see her. And so when that happens to planets, it's kind of a powerful alchemical process of purifying them, but they are absent. So she doesn't have the powers that she normally has. And so it can be, so in that way too, her absence can feel like a really, we can really struggle with that because we don't have the kind of cohesion, social harmony, that way of connecting, that way of attracting things that we might normally have. So we've got a Venus that's pretty beat up in this situation, and she's coming to square Pluto, which means she's having to deal with the monstrous. And honestly, I think, you know, this, it's part of the new moon chart. I think, you know, it perfects basically at the same time as the new moon. And so I think after the new moon, it will start dissipating. I think what we will really see and what we'll really have to deal with in our lives is the consequences of this aspect building and us approaching it. So I think probably most of the action of this happened last week, happened in the days building up to the perfection of this square, and it will start to release. But what we might feel is we lost more than what we bargained for. I think what this aspect offers us is a glimpse into the true price of desire and the true price of Venus in Aries. Remember, 2 weeks ago, when we had a Libra full moon, we had Venus together with the sun. And what I talked about there was really connecting with this deep desire and the necessity that you go after it as a way to liberate yourself, as a way to facilitate the freedom and the health of your relationships. And I stand by every bit of that. But that doesn't mean that it won't cost anything. And I think, you know, when we hit these Venus-Pluto squares, we panic. I have a natal Venus-Pluto square, and when it gets triggered, it's really, I mean, it's trauma. Like all my trauma comes up, and right, and what happens when trauma comes up? We go into tunnel vision. We think in really rigid ways. We think in really black and white, and that kind of condenses time into this really like everything is happening all at once, which is really, it's not true. It feels true, but it's not true. And I think that if that feeling prompts us to action, which it may, and this is not a moral judgment, this is if we take action instead of, taking a step back and waiting for that to come down, that sense of urgency, that sense of intensity, that sense of, really fight or flight that's charged in our body, then that could have, it's going to have big consequences. Because there's a lot of, like I said, it's very high stakes. And so I think, right, part of Venus being combust and under the beams and us not having access to her, there can be this sense of we don't know totally what we want. It's really hard to come into that connection. with that part of our heart. And there can be a lot of impatience. I think there's a lot of impatience. It's not about sitting on your hands while you're panicking. It's not about that. It is about staying nimble and keeping your options open, because when we come into these squares, sometimes we feel like we have to take action right away. We feel like there's a make or break. And I just want to say, with Venus in not good condition, do not do the things that she tells you to do. Yeah. I think use that energy to do other things. Don't do things that are going to shut doors for you. Yeah, so that's a heavier one. It's a more potent one, and it will be with us this week. And then she goes into Taurus on Wednesday, I think it's Wednesday the 14th. Venus will go into Taurus, and then she'll still be combust. She'll still be too close to the sun for us to see her, but her condition will improve and she'll get a little bit more grounded. And so I really want that ground to be, the ground rising up to meet you, to feel your earth on the ground, or your feet on the ground, your earth on the ground. I do want you to feel your earth on the ground. I do. Would be a great time to literally plant seeds, literally start a garden, get out in nature when it's warmer, and really get that connection. I don't want the story to be, right, that Venus square Pluto, things explode, and right, Venus going into Taurus is the ground, is you doing a face plant into the ground. Yeah. So for the good of you, for the good of everyone, if you get charged, if you get triggered, go on a run. Organize something. Maybe that's only Virgo advice. I don't know. My chart's so Virgoan. Organizing something does a tremendous amount for me. Yeah. So that is our new moon. We've got, that's our new moon. And so, like I say, mixed bag. Things start shifting next week when we get first Venus moving into Taurus and then the sun and Mercury. Things are going to slow down. You are going to find the ground. This was revving your engine, kind of, to get you excited to build the stoke, as we used to say, right? To get everything set up to go ahead. But, it's kind of like, you're going on a trip, but you don't know if you are going to, right, this is COVID aside, right? Like, you don't know if you're going to Italy to eat food, or if you're going to Peru to do backpacking and or if you're going to your grandma's house in Arizona, right? So pack your bags for each thing. You're going to go on a trip, but you need very different things. And so, right, it's you don't want to not have rain gear in your Amazon Peru bag. You're not going to want to, anyway, whatever. I'm not going to stretch this out too much because it's Aries season and we don't have the patience. Thank you very much for watching. If you would like this video, that would be so awesome. Feel free to share it, subscribe to my channel. I also have a full moon weaving class that is happening on April 25th, so the day before the new moon. It's a Sunday, and it's in partnership with Trudy Perry, who's an incredible fiber artist and such a sweet, generous human. She's a Taurus new moon, And so if you'd like to sign up for that or find more information, you can find tons of information about it on my Instagram. Also on my website, I'll put a link to it. And we sit around on Zoom. Trudy will send you all the supplies you need. We sit around, we learn how to weave, we learn different fiber techniques, and then and I talk about the full moon, and I give everyone a mini reading, and we just kind of use it as a ritual space to ground ourselves in that potency of that transformative full moon, and to make something beautiful. And so, you know, using our hands to create ritual that is embodied in the world. So I invite you to participate in that. You can find the information in the link in the description of this video. And I wish you a blessed new moon, a great next 2 weeks, and I'll be back in a week with my Taurus season forecast video. Cheers.